Soviet foreign policy, right? So Soviet foreign policy, of course, we can see it, intertwined, like for an example with Rapallo and stuff. But we should see it as a number of phases. For 1917, 1918, Lenin is trying to extract the Soviet Union out of World War I, which leads to the Brest-Litovsk Treaty. 1918 to 1920, Russia is occupied by civil war, and then the Soviet Union is trying to expand. There's this belief that the workers of the world will unite as the Soviet proletarian soldier comes to them, but as it turns out, they're stopped at the gates of Warsaw in 1920, and neither the Polish, nor the Italian, nor the German workers are particularly keen on communist ideology because they're sold on the idea of, for example, German socialism and democracy, or Polish nationalism, or whatever. So after this, the Soviet Union, turns inward. It's chilling, biding its time, trying to keep relatively good relations with other countries. In 1928 to 1933, we'll have a reversal with the left turn of the Comintern, which I'll explain a bit later. But once again, after this period, since 1934, the Soviet Union actually embraces collective security, despite the fact that it initially saw the League of Nations as a capitalist ploy. But by 1939, it decides that it's better to work with Hitler than with the West. So, what are the trends that we're seeing here? So, basically, we had that question. Was the Soviet Union aiming to enforce socialism at home or world revolution? And this changed from time to time, because from 1918 to 1920, right, they're trying to bring about that world revolution. And the same is true for the left turn of the Comintern. The Comintern was the Communist International, the organization of all communist parties from around the world, and they were basically under the leadership of the Soviet Union, as that was the one and only communist state. For the most part, they actually embraced cooperation with moderates in their country, so the socialists, SPD in Germany, and so on. After the Third Revolution, after the Second International in 1928, there was the left turn when Moscow declared that they should not work with these, fake social capitalists who are actually, just lightweight bourgeoisie, and instead we see a much more subversive role of the Comintern. But this again changes in 1934 when the Soviet Union once again embraces a much more national interest-driven ideology, where they're trying to rebuild, strength for their country. Because it is true that the Soviet Union is driven by ideology, and it believes that the capitalists will inevitably collapse, and it's impossible to trust them, and that they will definitely start fighting against each other. It is also true that the Soviet Union has significant interest in cooperating with the West. It needs money, so the West is a market to sell wheat to and to get investors from, right? That's one thing. And it needs security against foreign aggression, because first of all, the memory of World War I with the German invasion, and even you could go back to Napoleon, and you have the memory of the interventions during the Russian Civil War, when the Americans, the British, and the French all showed up to shoot at the Soviets at various places. So the Soviets were very conscious of security, especially since they had such a large border, and there was it was so open. It wasn't based around rivers or mountains for the most part that could protect them. So all these influences, a combination of both ideology and national interest in foreign policy, and of course what the Soviets were doing changed over time depending on the international situation, the specifics, the views of different leaders, the leaders of the Soviet Union at the time, and the attitude that different states had towards the Soviet Union. For example, by 1927, despite up to this point the British and the Russians building a better relationship, actions of the Comintern crashed that relationship, leading to a cold period up until around 1934, which led to a resurrection of positive British views toward the Soviet Union. But after their actions in the Spanish Civil War, this again changed, right? So in the end, as we all know, the Soviets decided to work with the Nazis before World War II blew up. for a lot of reasons. First of all, they lost trust in the Anglo-French, especially after the Munich conference, and they didn't believe that they were trustworthy partners. And there was also a lot of benefit to working with Hitler. Hitler was not a dictator, so they were on the same wavelength, you could say. Similar ways of working for the government. They both had similar foreign policy goals. They all wanted security and to expand into Eastern Europe. So there was a lot of stuff to go there, to go on. And once again, to just highlight a few terms, right? For the national interest foreign policy, we can just think of national interest, restoring international relations with the rest of the world to have those export markets and partners. And there was this idea of peaceful coexistence with the capitalists. I mean, after all, the capitalists will inevitably collapse. That's the ideology. So we can peacefully coexist until they end up doing so, while we bide our time and grow stronger, so that we can bring the world revolution. But at the same time, there's those ideological aims of spreading the revolution and undermining capitalism. Global capitalism. In the top right corner, that's the picture of the Second International, by the way, which had its turn to the left.